speeches. I believe in your book they would be calling them strategies, but in the handout we called them types of persuasive speeches. So now you know both terms in case you need them. In a persuasive speech, you want to make a claim of fact, value, or policy. If you are making a claim of fact, you are claiming that something is true or not true. How can you claim a fact?
Evidence.
You can provide evidence. How are you going to prove that a fact is not true?
Contrary evidence?
Contrary evidence. So people believe that they have facts. People believe they have facts that Elvis is dead, and people have facts that Elvis is alive, right? People believe that they have facts for that. People believe Tupac Shakur, they have facts for that he's dead, and people believe they have facts that he's alive. So they can provide you with all sorts of information that is fairly credible. Same thing with people who think that in the 60s the astronauts from the United States landed on the moon, and then there are people who believe that it's just a conspiracy and that didn't happen.
Seems like a lot of work to fake that.
It's, right. I mean, to me too, it seems like a lot of work to fake that.
Yeah.
But you know, there are people who believe that. My father-in-law believes all sorts of this stuff. So things that other people take for granted and say, okay, yep, we landed on the moon. He's like, no, that was a government conspiracy. So, or the Titanic was built to sink. It was built wrong, and so it was going to sink inevitably. So why did they even say like that kind of thing?
Both of them on the iceberg, probably.
Oh, good.
They could have both fit on the iceberg.
Didn't work.
He didn't have to drown. Have you ever seen the movie? There's
Yes,
room.
yes, I know. I knew what you were getting at.
Yeah, she knew right away.
And my father refused, or father-in-law, not my dad. My dad's a little different than that. Anyway, my dad, can't say that my father-in-law is less intelligent than my father, right? That's not allowed. Okay. So my father-in-law would have said that the ending of that movie, he already knew it, so why would he bother going to see the movie?
Yeah.
Because everybody was going to die anyway.
It's a great 5 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's claiming facts. I believe I have facts to support this argument. I believe I have facts to support this argument. That's a claim of fact. Claim of value. Is something right or wrong, moral or immoral, just or unjust? It's based on your values. So what would you be able to convince somebody of if you were trying to convince them that something was right or wrong?
You probably can't do like evolution.
Like the Sarah
That would
McLachlan.
be too in depth as a value, like too, you couldn't explain it in a short amount of time.
Right, for our purposes, you're
But that
right,
would
we
be
probably
value.
couldn't. But that would be value if somebody wanted to explain evolution as an option.
Like in the Arms of an Angel commercials, how they talked about, or
Animal cruelty?
yeah.
Yes? Okay, yeah. So that might be value, whether it's cruel and unusual punishment to an animal
Yeah.
or not.
But they also they don't portray it, but they show all the animals.
Right, they don't actually show the cruelty, which is
Yeah.
probably okay with me as a regular TV viewer that wouldn't want to see that,
Yeah.
but you know, you have to do more research. Sure. Fact and value, you could talk about PETA, people for the ethical treatment of animals.
Yeah.
It depends, you know, people have values, bless you, as far as whether you can actually say that in class, whether I can say bless you. That is a question of value. technically. So would PETA. You know, they are questions of value. Facts are that people eat animals, but value-wise, is it a good idea to do that? Is it ethical? Is it moral or immoral to kill animals to eat them? That would be choices of fact and value. The last one is a little bit about what we talked about with the policy. This comes into like legal terms or policies for or against something. So like in Colorado where I teach, the policy is that you treat marijuana smoking in the same way you would tobacco smoking. So we have the perimeter, you know, it's a tobacco-free zone here on our campus. In Colorado, they have a similar tobacco-free zone, and they just said that's also the marijuana-free zone. So if you want to smoke pot, you have to go outside this 25-foot radius or whatever it is.
So are you convincing people or persuading people to believe something that has already happened or something that you want to happen?
With policy?
Yeah, any of them.
Any of them. Either one. You're trying to argue for or against something, whether you're asking people to actually do something or not do something. Sometimes you're just
like
asking
why something should happen or if something has already happened, why you should believe it.
Right.
So you can do either.
Either one.
Okay.
Yep. Yes.
Policy is like arguing against something, saying that it's like unlawful because of the laws we have, kind of like that.
It could be, yes. Or that a policy, like school policy, is not necessarily law, but
Yeah.
it's school policy. And so you might be able to argue whether that policy is good or bad. Like, I believe the University of Iowa, I'm not sure if it still is, but it was at one time in Iowa City legal to drink at age 18. That is a policy for the University of Iowa and the surrounding community. It is not for the rest of the state. So you could argue whether you thought that was a good idea or a bad idea.
Just like how like in Amsterdam marijuana is illegal, but in Holland it's not.
Right. Or in the United States,
Yeah.
marijuana is illegal except in Colorado and
California and Washington.
right, and then now Minnesota has medical
And I think Maine.
marijuana. Maine does too. Okay. Or, you know, in South Dakota they're raising the speed limits.
I was just going to talk about that.
Yeah, tomorrow the speed limit is going up to 80.
That's awesome.
So that's also could be argued with policy-wise, whether they should go up or should not. And even if it's something that's already happened.
Because I saw that on Facebook earlier that they were going to do that.
Yeah.
It isn't really understanding. I have time to read about it, but.
Right.
Pretty much they just had to give us something for raising taxes.
Everybody already drives 80 anyway.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So now they're just going to drive 85, right?
Probably.
But what about what? You know,
This is why they didn't go up to 85, because then
Isn't
everybody
it
would drive
like,
90,
should
right?
you just be able to drive whatever speed you want? Because is that considered like?
like the Autobahn.
Well,
Wouldn't that be considered part of like not or what's it called? Like
Freedom?
why- Yeah, like your freedom. Like why can't you just? They're not telling you to turn left or right. Like, or you know, kind of what I'm saying. Like
That
Right,
can
right.
endanger
they're
other
not telling
people
you,
too,
it
though.
could endanger. Yeah, that's right. So that'd be like a really good one to argue.
and it's actually a policy that was implemented by Jimmy Carter, I believe, speed
Yeah.
limits in the first place.
Yeah.
And the reason that the Carter administration, I mean, obviously the president can't do it himself, but the Carter administration, the reason they did it is to save gas, because gas was so expensive that they were trying to save on the amount of gas people use, so they came up with a nationwide speed limit. And then the power a few years ago was given back to the states, and then the states could do whatever they want with it. Montana, did they go with no speed limit? I think
No,
they,
For a
used to
while,
have one, but
now they have.
yeah, for a while they tried without it, and now they put one back on or something like that, yeah. So,
Everybody always thinks they don't have one. It's funny.
yeah, when I drove there last, they did not have one, so it's been a little while.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I was pretty sure that they put one back on. North
Why?
Dakota tried that too, just because people drive at dangerously high speeds then. You know, if you say you can drive whatever speed you want, then they're driving 100 or 120 miles an hour down the interstate, and they come up behind the little old lady going 50. That could cause a serious accident.
There should be minimum speeds too, because there's.
There are.
Like
Yeah, they're gonna raise the minimums
No, they need to be posted on the edge of the.
They are.
So yeah,
Not
it's just
here.
not
Yeah,
as
they are.
common.
Yeah.
They are, but it's not as common. There are more speed limit signs than there are the minimum
Yeah.
signs. But
Well,
there are minimum
How often
signs.
do you see people doing minimum compared to
All the
people
time.
over?
I'm always stuck getting slow.
In my Blazer, I went minimum because it topped out at like 70.
Yeah, but minimum is 40. I've never seen someone go to 40.
Whatever.
The only time I've ever seen people go 40 is if it was really bad weather.
Yeah.
And then in North
In which
Dakota, they
case
have
they
people who
can't.
drive their tractors down the interstate. I haven't seen too many tractors on the interstate driving in South Dakota,
I've
but
seen them on
North
highways.
Dakota they do.
In Brandon,
Are they
there's a lot.
raising? Are they raising?
On the
them?
interstate?
No, there's no
Oh,
interstate, but it's
yeah.
in Brandon, there's a lot of tractors and stuff like that on the road.
Yeah.
Are they raising the minimum then too for the?
I don't think so.
I don't know. I did not hear that part, so I'm not sure.
Yes, I don't really see why they would have to.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, someone's actually going to minimum like 40, and then someone's going to the maximum 80. Kind of scary.
So we have persuasive speech, the types of speeches or the strategies that you want to use. There are two ways to make an argument. You're going to ask somebody to change their beliefs or their ideas, to agree with you or not. And then there's also the call to action. So if you're actually asking someone to do something. So how do we do that? You can use some of the similar structures that you used for informative speaking, but there are also some that are really specific to persuasive speeches. So you could provide a problem solution. Here's the problem, here's my solution. I believe Jeff called these the harms, so if it helps you to understand it a little bit better, when I was grading speeches for his class, he was calling these the harms, or the problems. So what is harming someone else or something else? If it helps you to understand it a little bit better, you can think of it. And then how would you solve this problem? What's the solution to the problem? For speeches that need just a little bit more in-depth, you could do a problem cause solution speech. If we go with our smoking ban, for example, the problem is secondhand smoke causes lung cancer, or causes lung cancer, right? And the solution would be to implement or continue a smoking ban, right?
What are they doing with the smoking ban?
Nothing right now, it's in place and
What is
they've
it
just
about?
left it in place.
You can't smoke in public, like.
In public,
Right.
like overall, like
Right.
not
Well, some-
outside?
You
or
can do it
anything?
outside, just not in like public facilities, so like at a restaurant or
Right.
Some places
Anywhere
actually
where
want to outlaw
public
it
is.
entirely because of the health problems that come in. The taxpayers' money goes to the.
To the health issues, yes. And really, it's actually significantly cheaper to buy tobacco products in South Dakota than it is to buy them in Minnesota.
Minnesota's.
An outrageous amount of money
Everyone
to buy
drives not
tobacco.
like Iowa.
From-
Minnesota.
Right, Iowa or South Dakota,
Yeah.
because they're both significantly cheaper.
do you
Yep.
bring back truckfuls of tobacco
They
in
do.
Minnesota?
Do I?
Martins.
No.
Yeah.
I do.
You can hustle tobacco in Laverne.
I could. I'm not going to. I don't personally consume any tobacco products. I'm allergic to cigarette smoke, so it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me. However, when my husband was in Iraq, he picked up chewing tobacco.
It's so gross.
It's absolutely disgusting. And yeah, it's kind of an argument all the time, but I tell him if he's going to waste our money, he might as well spend it in South Dakota since he's here 5 days a week anyway. He can come over here and not waste as much of it as if he bought it in Minnesota. So that would be the only time I would do that.
Smoking
But
is so disgusting. If like the inside or like the outside of your body looked like the inside of your body, you would not, like nobody would smoke. Cause it's like they can't see what they're doing, so it's just, yeah. At my last job, everybody that I worked with smoked, and they would like eat, we'd have like a really nice luncheon or something, and they eat and blah blah blah, and then they go have a smoke. It's like, what's that, dessert? Like, it's just,
Yeah.
ooh, I mean, come on.
It's not my forte, but there are people who find it to be their vice and they will not give it up. I thought everybody that was a smoker was trying to quit, but not everybody. There are people who just, that's their thing and they're just going to keep doing it.
My brother-in-law's grandma, she like quit smoking when she was 80, and then she was 99, and the doctor, like, she said, I want to start smoking again. And the doctor's like, oh yeah, go ahead. And she lived till she was like 102. So like, the doctor just said whatever, you know,
Yeah.
like go ahead. And
So she gave it up for almost 20 years?
Yeah, and then she was in like one of the house, whatever, retirement places or whatever.
Yeah.
And they went in like a room, and she'd always, they gave her like an iron bib because like the cigarette ash would always fall and burn her clothes. So she had an iron bib and she'd sit there with it in her mouth, and the ash would be like this long.
Oh my.
It was hilarious.
It's kind of gross.
Yeah.
Another method for persuading people is comparative advantages. You might want to compare the advantages of smoking to not. Usually, comparative advantages is used to compare something to other options. So if I were to try to convince you that driving a Ford truck is better than driving any other truck because I drive an F-150, and I could talk about how it's been Motor Trend's Truck of the Year forever, I would be comparing it probably to a Dodge or Chevy. I might also compare it to the Toyota Tundra, the Nissan Titan. I might compare it to a lot of different things. With comparative advantages, and I'll talk more about these fallacies in just a minute, but you have to make sure that your logic is sound and that you let people know that there's other options out there. There's not just 2 options or there's not just 3 options. People, when they talk about, if you've ever been in small towns, they talk about Ford, Chevy, and Dodge. They don't even often mention GMC, and if it's a foreign automaker, they don't talk about that either. So comparative advantages wise, they're limiting what you can compare and what your choices are. The last one Monroe's motivated sequence is a little bit more in-depth. It actually has 5 steps. And this might be the one that you guys will use for your group speech since I'm going to be the only one in your audience. But we'll talk about that when we get to the group speech. This is definitely where you have a specific call to action if you're going to use Monroe's motivated sequence. You draw attention to the fact that there is a problem. Then the need defines the problem and expresses the fact that there's a need to address this problem right now. Satisfaction then is the solution. You're providing a solution for the problem. Visualization. If you follow through with the solution, here's what the future is going to look like. So visualizing, kind of telling the future. This is what the future is going to look like if you implement my solution. If you don't implement my solution, this is what the future will look like. That's what you do in the visualization step. And then action is a call to action. So say we were doing reduce, reuse, recycle, right? So we might say the problem is what?
Environmental harm.
Environmental
Too much
harm.
garbage. Not
Too much
enough
garbage.
place to put it,
Okay, so why do we need to address this right now?
so we don't run out of room.
So we don't run out of room.
The problem keeps getting worse unless we do something about it.
It's a problem and it keeps getting worse unless we do something about it. So we're losing layers of the ozone, cutting holes in it based on our use of garbage,
Everything.
trash. Yeah. Okay, so what would our solution then is the 3 R's, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle. If we do those things, if we do more
We cut back.
of them, what's our visualization? What does our future look like if we do the 3 R's?
Not as bad as it looks now.
Not as bleak? Not as bad as it looks now.
Probably
An
cleaner.
improved ecosystem.
An improved ecosystem.
Probably cleaner air, and it would probably improve like respiratory problems that you get in larger cities like Beijing.
Oh, yes. Beijing. You know, people wear masks there. Not everybody, though.
Why?
Only the sick people.
Because living there for 2 months is the equivalent to smoking a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, I visited there. It's,
Is it always smoggy?
yes.
Do they ever have this done without a smog layer sometimes?
Do they ever get like a nice wind that just kind of clears it out to the ocean?
Not really. I don't recall that was ever even an option. Although I was there just before the 2008 Olympics, and so they did implement.
Clean everything.
They tried to clean everything, and then they implemented a policy where you could only drive on certain days,
Yeah.
depending on what kind of car you had. So if your car maker started with A through an H,
that'd be
you could
easy.
drive
Yeah.
on Monday, Wednesday,
You're
Friday.
like, use a damn
If it's
other
H
car.
through Z is the maker of the car, then you can drive Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and nobody can drive cars on
That'd
Sunday.
be funny as hell. You'd see all these cars like the same make and shit every day.
Well, you do anyway
Well,
in China.
yeah.
But yes, that's how they tried to limit the smog for when the Olympics came to town.
Do you think people bought more cars too? Did that boost their economy?
It might have, because if I had a car in A through H, but I wanted to drive every day of the week, then I'd just buy a car that was I
The
through
rich
Z.
people probably would.
It's possible. At that time, though, they had just lifted the one-child policy, and they had the earthquake, and so there were a lot of orphans, and people were beginning to actually adopt children in China. Chinese children were being adopted within their country for the first time. It was an interesting time in China. Anyway, the reason they call this Monroe's motivated sequence is because a guy named Alan Monroe came up with it. Questions about any of these, how you might use them?
I have one question about the.
Sure. Fact value policy?
Yeah, can we use fact and policy to support our values, like a value?
Sure.
Okay. That's
Just
what-
make a better persuasive speech, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just what I forgot to ask that.
Yeah. No, you could definitely do that. Your main goal is probably still going to be then your claim of value,
Yeah.
but you're going to use some facts and some policy to back it up. Yes. Actually, when you're giving a speech, if you're more repetitive in nature, particularly in a persuasive speech, people tend to be more persuaded. So if you think about political speeches, for example, people who repeat their message more frequently become more persuasive and more, actually, either more liked or disliked based on the message that they're putting forth. You can also think about something as simple as shopping for a car. How many times or how many ways do they try and sell you the same car?
Yeah. Or
They're still
songs-
selling the same car. But
Songs too.
what was that?
Songs too.
Songs.
More repetitive chords.
Yes, exactly. It's easier to remember it if their chorus is repeated more often. Yes. I think the least intelligent song of all time hit the top of the pop charts and the country charts at the same time in 72 or 3.
My achy breaky heart.
No, that was in 90 something, but no, Delta Dawn. At least Achy Breaky Heart has some point to it. Google Delta Dawn, there is no point. There's like, it just stops.
How's it go?
There's no end to the story.
Delta Dawn. What year
Yeah.
is that?
72 or 73, it went to the top of the charts. But there's no point. There's no end to the story. Like this lady is waiting around for somebody to come back to her, and nobody comes back, but they never say what happens to her either. The song stops before there's an end.
So we have to do just one of those structures?
Right. You wouldn't try to use all of them.
in
And
one.
is that on the handouts too, like that summary of that stuff?
This is in your book.
In the book, okay.
Yes. So it would not be in the handouts. Now, in your book, you will also find, if you want to stop.
Can I take a picture of that today?